You are a writer, and you know how challenging it can be to find the time to get that writing done. Well, what if you're a mom of three teenagers, a spouse, an owner of multiple pets that include dogs, cats, and a snake, and you're a full-time teacher? Well, our guest tonight on Writer Talks is going to help you understand how to be a brilliant, productive writer and balance all the robust wonderfulness of life. Welcome to Writer Talks. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and here at Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, I interview the winners of our monthly short story contests. And with us tonight is Candice Kelsey. She is a brilliant writer. She's going to read from her story tonight, and it's just absolutely beautiful. See, bells are ringing to emphasize how beautiful her writing is. So Candice, welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I love that I have sound effects now too. I appreciate so much your kind words. And when you list it all out like that, it makes me more tired than I already am. But I got to say, with all those responsibilities come a lot of material to work with when you write.
Yes, I can't even imagine. So you have a fascinating life, and your short story that's available at twosisterswriting.com/winning stories is called Costumes for a Different Woman. And it's so beautifully written. It's about cancer and a woman's death, and it's chilling. Can you talk about how you got this idea and how the story kind of came together for you?
Definitely. I have to admit that it started as a short poem in my mind. And I thought, I'm gonna write this, and I'm gonna work this as a poem. And I sat on it for a couple months, really mulling it over in my head, which is, what we writers do. We overthink and we think and we think. And I played with it, and it just never kind of seemed comfortable as a poem. It seemed, I think of my poems as things I write as, like my students or my children. I want them to be who they truly are. I know that sounds kind of new agey, but, like I want them to reveal to me, what they're supposed to be. And this was just saying, no, I'm not a poem. What are you doing? So,
Wow.
Yeah. And I, stubborn as I am, I eventually honored that. And I said, okay, I think this is maybe a micro story then, because it is a little more narrative. And so I went with it and I wrote it, and I decided to tell the story. Now, it's not a personal story. However, it is my reimagining of bits and pieces of truth from close friends of ours. Actually, a former student of mine who passed away from cancer, and his wife's, struggles with that, and what that has looked like for her in her grieving. And I wanted to honor her with that too.
Wow, beautiful. So Candice, would you like to read
Sure.
it to us? It's a brief story, but it packs a powerful punch.
Thank you. And I actually, one of the very cool sort of benefits of having done this is I actually contacted Linda Pestan, one of my favorite poets of all time, to ask if I could use an excerpt from one of her poems as the epigraph here. And just the fact that I was able to interact with her a little bit and have her approval was, just an amazing experience on its own. But so I open with an excerpt from Linda Pestan's poem. And her poem, this excerpt reads, "The dresses in my closet are costumes for a different woman, though I hide myself in their silky textures. The man asleep in my bed knows me best in the dark." He grows smaller. He grows smaller. Somehow he makes this old house feel draftier, like we live in a bank vault, and he's the balance dwindling toward the red. My crime, one of them anyway, is neglecting to lock the vault. Cancer had been staking us out for months, and when we weren't looking, it walked right through the front door in its terrible mask with its slick, urgent schemes. It would have snuck past the guards if we had any. Each day since then, I've searched for some forgotten cash drawer, some hidden drawer that contains piles of new undamaged cells. Most nights I dream that I wear the terrible mask as I gather his pills into neat piles and plant them in the garden out back. They begin to sprout moments before I awake. The scent of loam remains. And I'm preparing my heart for another day of fighting through the high grass of doctor's appointments, empty prescription bottles, the remarkable shrinking of my husband. And yet my closet remains the same. My clothes hang in anticipation to be worn again to some festive event or another. They are oblivious. They don't realize they have become but garish costumes I have shed, costumes for a different woman. Garter snakes prefer tall grass. When they grow, they have to shed a layer of their skin. The rocks help the process. I'm sure there are countless ghost-like skins sleeping in the meadows across North America even now. But my husband is growing smaller. He is shedding himself. And I am the tall grass caressing his brittle hands. Soon he will shed his warm bed, unhitch from this drafty house, and step over the mess cancer made of our lives. There's no costume to hide it. He will be so tiny, I won't be able to find him. I'll search the drawers for clumps of his hair. I'll scoop the cat litter extra carefully for lumps of his knuckles. I'll sweep out the fireplace for remnants of his papery skin. And then I'll remember to lock the front door. Before I fall asleep, before I dream of my pill garden, before I begin the search for something cancer didn't steal, I'll check that all the windows are shut tight, and I'll scream loud enough to feel alive. Maybe I'll even find forgiveness by myself in this drafty old house, and that will be the costume I wear. I got a little emotional.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's the images unto themselves are just so vivid and graphic. Papery skin, wow. And you know what? There's a universal message beyond cancer, which is horrible enough, but the clothes reminded me of my closet and my shoes during the pandemic.
Yes, very good.
Like dresses, suits, high heels, forget about it.
Right.
It was like
Right,
they just hung there for a year and a half.
Exactly. And you see, and they become these like almost, members of your household or neighbors, or they're your, social group, because you walk past them all the time and I should go to lunch with you. Oh, I haven't seen you in a while. Oh,
yes.
we still get along. Like, do we still fit?
Yeah.
Together?
Right. Right. Isn't that funny?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It's like mourning. It's the theme of mourning that's consistent with a life. She's mourning the woman she used to be. Mm-hmm. We mourn how we used to live.
Right. Oh, 100%. Right. And, so much of, I think, I can only speak as a woman, but just so much of kind of how I punctuate my memories is by sometimes the clothing, right? And just, I just, I associate this sweater or those pants with that time period or that loss or that victory,
Yeah. It's powerful. So it's so beautifully written. Can you talk about your process? Like, how do you just craft these words so beautifully together?
Thank you so much. I think there is something to that mystery of being in sort of the flow, the zone, whatever the tone is, but there is definitely a mystery of when your creative juices are going and you're just sort of in it. I know that I become absent to everyone around me when my head is really into something and I'm just moving with the words. I almost, am not me. I'm just sort of, channeling these ideas and these terms and these phrases. That's not to say there haven't been tons of revision and, some, writers' workshops and things like that are always, of course, so helpful and eye-opening. And in this case, really, it was killing my darlings, right? Like killing the idea that this was a poem and really letting that go and trying, a new genre to wake it up. And it just allowed me to really go deeper into a lot of the thoughts and the themes and the phrases and the imagery. And bringing in the snakes and the shedding of the skin. And, and again, a lot of that is from my life of dealing with, getting the skin out of the snake's cage because he's shed, and those images kind of stick with me of like, wow, it's the opposite. The snake is growing, and so he sheds his skin. My friend's husband is dying, and he's smaller. Every time we visit him at the hospital, he's tinier, tinier, tinier. And then just this concept of the pills, the constant pills, and just thinking like they're little tiny seeds, and thinking like if only she could plant those pills and grow, make something beautiful come from this, which I hope at the end is the forgiveness, that forgiveness of the universe, that, how does this happen? How do we end up losing people so brutally and so suddenly to something that's so gruesome? My goal is always to take the unfortunate and ever-present suffering or pain or mourning and use language to bring beauty to it, not to make it pretty, but to bring beauty and honor to the reality of suffering or real human situations, and using language to create something beautiful out of something violent, something upsetting.
Wow.
That's my goal always when I'm writing, is to, so I often have initially dark themes, and then I'm just trying to almost weirdly rework the ugly into something beautiful. And it's very cathartic. Yeah, that's a kind of a cathartic thing as a writer. My process is, I think, just living life and allowing myself to, allowing empathy and feeling, I definitely am an overly sensitive person, and I've, been called to task for that quite a bit in my childhood. But I do think that is where a lot of my thought life grows out of, because, if I just sort of felt bad for my friend and, walked through the grieving process with her and then moved on, that's one thing, and that's valuable, but it's kind of stays with me, and I rework it in my head a lot. And I think that thinking about it and feeling it and recognizing the imagery and the symbolism in everyday life that could maybe add some beauty, add some honor to the experience, is my goal. And I think also, this is my number one rule as a writer. And I think all the writers out there will maybe relate to this. I don't know.
Okay.
And I tell this to my students too. When you have that little ding, 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 those bells that we heard earlier, when that goes off, like, ooh, I like this idea, or even I like this word, I like this phrase. You don't ignore it. You have to stop, you have to write it down, you have to engage it as well as you can in the moment, of course, unless, you're driving or whatever. But I mean, I've had to pull over many, many, many times, jot something down, and 20 minutes later, I've got some bones of something that I want to rework.
Wow,
but it's times that I ignore it, where I say, oh yeah, I like that. Okay, I'll deal with that later. It's gone. And it's poof, gone. Right? So like my biggest advice is, don't ever let it get away from you. Like, grab it, capture it now, catalog it somehow in some way, and then revisit it as soon as you can. So like I love that advice. Thank you. I listened to Sirius XM Broadway. I love the Broadway tunes. I'm a big show tune person. So I listen to that radio as like I drive my daughter to soccer. And Seth Rudetsky was talking about a funny story with B. Arthur from the musical Mame. And apparently she gave a long 23-minute stare once in character. And I thought to myself, whoa, okay, I've seen that by my aunts, my mom's sisters. And so I pulled over and I just jotted down the bare bones of a poem. And it turns out it's lovely, and I've worked on it, and I'm really happy with it. And I think if I hadn't done that right then in that moment, even though I was late getting home or whatever, it would have been gone, and I would never have thought of it again.
Wow. And what did you do with the poem once you wrote it? What do you do with your poetry?
So I like to get them out there. And, I don't know why that is, why we feel the need to share our work, but I'll submit it to various journals that I think it would be a good fit for. But honestly, like I said, like I'm trying to take some of the scratchy, itchy parts of life and try to make something beautiful out of them. And so that, that poem in particular is about dealing with maybe some toxic family members and how to, maybe laugh about that and find some humor in that, and how to turn that into something cathartic and something a little more beautiful that gets at an emotion that maybe was stuck inside somewhere.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh. So, Candice, you are a high school English teacher. And I said, a mom of 3 teenagers. You have multiple pets, a spouse, a house. How do you write? Where do you write? When do you write? Like, how do you squeeze that in?
Well, honestly, I couldn't survive if I didn't. I mean, it's really as important as breath to me, not to be too hyperbolic, but there's not a day that goes by that I'm not thinking about creating a piece or reworking a piece or playing with language in some way. And I have to say, I'm very blessed to be teaching English 8 hours a day. So my students are working with poems and we're unpacking them and they're writing their own poetry and I'm interacting with them, and, just their youth and their, maturation process alone is entertaining, but like there's so much there that I walk away with. So here I am being paid full-time job to work with students in their writing, causing me to kind of think about, okay, what's my writing process and how am I, if I'm assigning them to write, a high bun, am I able to do that? And I better try my own, chops at doing that. And let's look at Basho and let's look at how he brought in Zen Buddhism into this new poetic art form. And, what does that mean? And then it gets me thinking, gets my creative juices flowing. So I would say that for some reason, and I don't know why, all of the tasks of life and all the responsibilities, which are many, right, and never ending, the laundry never ends, the dishes never end, right, the missed flights, which happened yesterday, trying to get my son back to school, all that stuff is, can stop up the pipes. But I just feel so blessed because in so many ways, it just gives me so much more to work with. There's never a dull moment. There's never something I'm not thinking about. Now, that being said, I do spend a lot of time in thought, I will sequester away, or I will tune out here and there. So I'm not the perfect mother. I'm not the perfect wife. I'm far from it. But I think there's an understanding in the family and the way our family works, especially since my children aren't so little, is that, we all kind of appreciate each other's space and respect each other's space. And they know I'm a weirdo and an introvert and I'll zone out and, work on a poem or go read a book or something. They're just used to me. And, a lot of times they're excited because they'll be in a poem. And so, I just have a really supportive husband and really supportive kids. And then again, working with teenagers and working, and having pets and just kind of being in the world and in the life. And, life is in session is what I always say. Like that is just endless material to think about. I find when things are really kind of slow and everybody's away and nobody's home, those aren't the times that I really write because I feel just kind of not stimulated. But it's when things are happening that I'm like, okay, I got to do this. I've got this idea. I got to write this down.
Wow, that's powerful, surprising. They always say when you want something done, give it to a busy person. And that's like you, like that you're fueled by the activity and the stimulation. That's really cool. So what are your big writing dreams? Are you working on a novel or a memoir or anything, screenplay?
So many dreams. I just feel like this is where the dreams come to die when in my brain, because I'm like, I have all these like high aspirations that I just can't ever seem to do. But I'm not really interested in writing a novel. I've realized that about myself. I can't create characters. I'm not a story person. One of my best friends is a TV writer, and she has all the post-it notes all over her windows with storylines that she's coming up with. And I just admire that so much. I just can't, story just doesn't come to me. But images and connection and comparison and playfulness of language. And I think also just associations, those all seem to come to me. So I'm definitely one for microfiction. I'm definitely one for poetry. I have written a couple short stories. I've had a couple published and I was happy with them. I maybe don't feel so confident doing those, but I feel a little more confident with poetry. My latest goals have been to really explore prose poems. So I kind of want to mix the genres together and really play with that. So I've written about 4 or 5 in the last week or so, and I would say I'm happy with probably 2 of them where they are right now. But it's fun to explore a new genre. I have a couple full-length collections and a couple chat books that I'm sending out, but I haven't really had any bites. So I'm just, continuing to write. You've inspired me though, Elizabeth, because I haven't really written a micro story in a while, and reading that one out loud with you was really a blessing because it's inspired me to write like that as well again.
Oh, good. Because it was a delight to read, even though it was a gruesome topic. It was really like, wow, look how she spun those words together. I just admire that so much.
When it was published by y'all, see, I'm in Georgia now.
That was quick.
So many friends of mine who, are just such dear friends that are excited to read my work. They all thought, they were convinced my husband had cancer, and they were calling and concerned. And I was like, no, it's not.
Oh, wow.
So that was like,
wow.
Yeah, I got to be careful.
Speaking of the regional difference, that's more layers for your writing fodder. You recently moved from Los Angeles after 27 years there.
Yeah.
To Augusta, Georgia, which is a huge cultural shift, geographic shift. Oh my gosh.
I've been yes ma'am to death, and I've been, the brave chop to death. It's really hunting. It's all new. We're a vegan family, and so it's just there's hunting all around us, and we're like really trying to.
Oh my gosh.
But so much, wow. I mean, I'm not being negative. It's really a wonderful place, wonderful city, wonderful people, but definitely
good. Wow, fascinating. I'm sure we'll be seeing some stories and poems about that.
Yes, absolutely.
So Candice, since you seem to be mastering the art of being busy and being a productive writer, and a great one at that, can you offer some tips to all the writers out there watching right now who can do better with time management or cram some creativity into a 15-minute opening in their schedule? Can you share some tips, please?
Again, I would say, number one, when the idea pops in your head, do not let it get away. Like, really think of it as that balloon that's floating away. Grab the string right back and keep it recorded somewhere. That would be my key advice. Other than that is try to view everything that's happening around you, again, as material and as the catalyst for creativity. Even the littlest things or the most annoying things, try to force yourself to see perhaps the symbolism in, doing the laundry or a particular shirt that you're folding. Like, think of the memory, what's evoked by that, and what can you do with that. Also, reading. I mean, I read, I didn't say this earlier, I read as much as I possibly can. And I read stuff that I wouldn't necessarily be drawn to, or that I voices that I would have nothing in common with or don't really understand their life experiences. I love to read because it opens up all these pathways in my mind and in the creativity. I think it all shows up later in my writing. So I think feed yourself with reading, really keep your imagination fed, and challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone and maybe read a style of writing or an author that you're not maybe interested in, or you have no commonality. Wow. It's really powerful for me.
Okay.
Yeah. So for example, like, teaching, Basho and 17th century, travelogue haiku to my students has been crazy and fun. And then I have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles with my 15-year-old to get his permit, and we have to wait, 2 hours for our number to come up. So I put together a poem about reading haiku at the DMV, and like the juxtaposition of the simplicity of haiku and then the complexity of the red tape of the Department of Motor Vehicles. And it turned out really kind of nice. So I think in those moments when, sadly, a lot of people around us are constantly on their phones, that's a moment to kind of, really take something in and jot it down to come back to later. I'm not somebody who has a rigid schedule of like, okay, from 8 to 9 at night, I'm writing, or I'm going to get up from 5 to 6 in the morning and I'm going to write. I think that that's great, for people who do that. And perhaps that's more of like a novelist or a screenwriter approach. But because so much of what I'm writing is imagistic and is really more associative and experiential, I don't do that. I just sort of let it come to me, and then I don't let it get away from me when it comes to me. I don't know if that's.
I love it. I love it, Candice. This is so interesting. You have great tips for writers. What's your biggest challenge with writing?
I would have to say confidence, probably, that imposter syndrome of like, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. This is
wow.
So I think that maybe other writers can identify with that a little bit. And it's those negative voices that you hear that creep up, especially for writers. And so when you receive rejections, or your writers group hates what you did, or you share it with a family member and they look at you like, what was that about? Like you just kind of, all those little barbs and arrows, get to you a little bit. So I think trying to have a little thicker skin, and realizing that it's all, this is so cliche, but it's all so much a process, and what doesn't work today doesn't mean it's never going to work. So for instance, I had this one poem that I was so emotionally attached to, dealing with just the heaviness of living in a city like LA and constantly having to rent and leave, and rent a new place and have to leave because they sell the house and you have to move your family and rent again. And just the life of renting in Los Angeles is really brutal, especially with a family. And I wrote this piece about it, and it just did not work at all. And then I finally had a writer friend say to me, "You've got two poems going on here. You're doing two completely different things, and that's why it's not working. Like this is not, you haven't like, you've got to do, So when I looked at it that way, it hurt, because I thought, no, this is so important to me, and this means so much to me that I'm expressing this, but I have to have the confidence to say, it's okay, it's not working. I'm going to split it into two. And I did. And now I'm so happy with each of them, because it gave them the freedom to really become more of what they should have been. And in the end, it was very rewarding, but I didn't have the confidence to do that. So I think for me, the big struggle is trusting the process, trusting, many of the other writers that I'm in contact with who, we share work back and forth. And instead of being hurt or feeling like, oh, so I suck, I can't do this, thinking of it as, yeah, I don't know everything. I'm still new at this. I'm young at this. And I've got to, listen to other people's advice and feel the confidence enough to try it.
Wow. That's fascinating. Candice, you should boost your confidence, because you're an awesome writer, and just being able to write at all with all that you've got going on is just mind-blowing to me. So you are a tremendous inspiration for me, and I know for all the writers out there who are watching right now. So do you have any final words you'd like to share?
Definitely. You have to call yourself a writer. That's the other step. You can't say, I'm trying to write. I'm trying to write something. I want to write something. No, you're a writer. And I tell this to people all the time, like, no, you are right. Like, you have to own that. You have to call yourself that. Words, as we know, have so much power. And if we keep thinking of ourselves as, well, I'm not a poet, or, well, I'm not a writer, I'm not published, I'm not this. No, you are. You're just, it's just all, like I said, it's time, and it's care, and it's growth, and it's revision. And it's just like life. I mean, as a parent, you're never going to be the perfect parent ever, and you're going to constantly, make mistakes. But I'm still a parent to that child, whether I make mistakes or not, no matter if I'm having a good day or a bad day, right? I'm still a human being. I'm not a part-time human being. Like, you are a writer. As long as you're thinking about writing and you're wanting to write and you're drawn to it, embrace that identity, and the rest will follow.
I love it. That's a beautiful way to close the show. Candice Kelsey, live from Augusta, Georgia, formerly of Los Angeles, amazing writer, winner of the Two Sisters Writing and Publishing monthly contest with her story, Costumes for a Different Woman. Thank you for joining us tonight on Writer Talks.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I wish you the absolute best, and I know more great things are going to come from you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Please stay in touch.
I will happily. And thank you, all of you, for joining us here tonight on Writer Talks, where you got to meet Candice Kelsey, an amazing writer with all kinds of inspiring tips that can help you be a better writer. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and here on Writer Talks, I interview the winners of our monthly short story contest. So please go over to twosisterswriting.com and check out our contest. You yourself might like to enter, win, be a guest on Writer Talks, and get published in our international anthologies of writers. So please do give us a thumbs up because you loved the interview. Please drop a comment if you have any questions or anything to say, and subscribe to the channel. And you can follow me on Twitter at Elizabeth Atkins or Two Sisters Writing, which is the number 2 Sisters Writing. And meanwhile, check out Writer Talks every Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on the Two Sisters Writing and Publishing YouTube channel. So we will see you next week, and I wish you happy writing.